Welcome everyone to today's aircraft overview, where today the topic of this video will be the Blackburn B-24 Skua. The Skua was a carrier-based low-wing two-seater single radial-engined aircraft produced and made by the British aviation company Blackburn Aircraft. The Skua was the first Royal Navy carrier-borne all-metal cantilever monoplane aircraft, as well as the first dive bomber in the Fleet Air Arm Service. The aircraft took its name from the seabird, which dive bombs any potential predators that come too close to its nest. The origins of the Skua can be traced back to the Air Ministry's issuing of Specification O-27-34, which saw a naval dive bomber whose primary role would be to disable or destroy enemy aircraft carriers with a secondary role as a fighter. Blackburn chose to produce its own response under the internal design reference B-24. The design effort was headed by aeronautical engineer G.E. Petty. Many competing companies also responded, including Avro, Bolt & Paul, Hawker and Vickers. During April 1935, Blackburn received an initial order for a pair of prototypes. On the 9th of February 1937, the first of these, serial number K5178, performed its maiden flight from the company's facility in Brow. Piloted by A.M. Blake. Unusually, it was initially painted in a distinctive grey and white colour scheme. On the 26th of June, the aircraft was first displayed to the public at RAF Hendon and performed an aerial display at RAF Hatfield Woodhouse 2 days later. 2 months later, the Skua's name was officially assigned to the type by the Air Ministry. Both prototypes were powered by the Bristol Mercury 12 radial engine. However, production Skuas were instead powered by the Bristol Pegasus 12, largely due to the Mercury engine being prioritised for the use of Bristol Blenheim production, my favourite aircraft. Another change made on production aircraft was the elimination of the wingtip slots, as they were deemed unnecessary after handling tests revealed mild stalling characteristics. Due to the growing urgency for more combat aircraft in the run-up to the Second World War, an initial production contract for 119 Skuas was issued in July 1935. Effectively being ordered straight from the drawing board. The Skua was configured as a low-wing cantilever monoplane of an all-metal construction. Its fuselage drew on the design of the Blackburn Shark, an earlier biplane making extensive use of flush-riveted alclad. It was internally divided into 2 watertight compartments beneath the pilot and gunner's cockpits to provide sufficient buoyancy in the event of a forced landing at sea. For the same reason, the crew compartments were also watertight up to the edges of the cockpit. The fuselage was stressed to withstand catapult-assisted takeoffs and arrested landing aboard aircraft carriers. A hydraulic damping device was incorporated in the hook. The crew were accommodated beneath an enclosed glazed cockpit enclosure, strengthened by 2 fuselage frames that formed a crash pylon in the event of the aircraft turning over. It was the Fleet Air Arm's first service monoplane and was a radical departure from a force that was primarily equipped with open cockpit biplanes such as the Fairey Swordfish. The pilot's position featured a sliding hood and was provided with favourable visibility in most forward-facing directions, while the gunner was seated aft of the wing, beneath a tilting canopy that could be opened or closed depending on whether the defensive gun was being operated or not. The machine gun was stored in a compartment within the rear decking when not in use. The aircraft's armament of 4 fixed forward-firing .303 caliber Browning machine guns in the wings and a single flexible rearward-firing .303 caliber Vickers K machine gun was considered to be effective for the era. For the dive bombing role, a 250-pound or 500-pound bomb was carried on a special swinging trapeze crutch under the fuselage, somewhat like that of the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, which enabled the bomb to clear the propeller arc on release. 4 40-pound bombs or 8 20-pound copper bombs could also be carried in racks under each wing. Its performance as a fighter was compromised by its dual role as a dive bomber. The size of the two-seat aircraft and extra strengthening of the airframe required to allow it to withstand the stresses of sustained high-speed dives meant it was relatively heavy compared to single-engined aircraft at 8,300 pounds gross compared to the 5,900 pounds for the Spitfire Mark I. The weight of the aircraft, coupled with the limited power from the 890 horsepower Perseus engine, meant the aircraft had a low rate of climb compared to contemporary Japanese Mitsubishi A5M and American Grumman F-3F carrier-borne fighters, along with the Royal Navy's Gloucester Sea Gladiator. The Skua was designed for best performance at low altitude, where its speed was comparable to potential enemy bomber aircraft, and the Skua with 4 wing-mounted Browning machine guns, which were much better armed than any other nation's pre-war naval fighter, as the aforementioned A5M and F-3F, which only had 2 machine guns each. The Skua was, however, an effective dive bomber, which was arguably its main intended role. It scored numerous successes as a dive bomber in the Norwegian campaign, sinking and damaging a number of ships, most notably the German cruiser Königsberg on the 10th of April 1940. During late 1938, initial deliveries of the Skua commenced. The first unit to receive the Skuas was 800 Naval Air Squadron at Wharfdown, supplementing and eventually replacing their Hawker Nimrod and Hawker Osprey biplanes. By November, the squadron had embarked on HMS Ark Royal, and during 1939 was followed by both 801 and 803 squadrons. By the start of the Second World War, there were 33 operational Skuas. The type quickly proved itself in combat. On the 14th of September, 3 Skuas took off from Ark Royal to go to the aid of the Fanad Head, which had been attacked by a U-boat. When they arrived, the Fanad Head was being shelled by the German submarine U-30, and all 3 dived and attacked the submarine, which quickly dived to safety. 2 of the Skuas were damaged by the blast of their 112-pound AS bombs and had to ditch. This was due to the bombs had been wrongly fused with too brief a time lapse. As a result of this error, the weapons detonated almost instantaneously, thus badly damaging the Skuas. U-30 returned to Germany with the crews of the 2 ditched Skuas, who became the first naval airmen to be prisoners of war in the conflict. Skuas were originally credited with the first confirmed kill by a British aircraft during the Second World War, as on the 26th of September 1939, 3 Skuas of 803 Naval Air Squadron flying from Ark Royal shot down a Dornier Do-18 flying boat over the North Sea, but later an earlier victory by a ferry battle on the 20th of September 1939 over Aschen was later confirmed by French sources. On the 10th of April 1940, 16 skuas of 800 and 803 Naval Air Squadron led by Lieutenant Commander William Lucy flying from RNAS Hatton in the Orkney Islands made a 330-mile night flight to arrive at the very limit of their radius at dawn over Bergen Harbour. They attacked and sank the German cruiser Königsberg with several direct hits. Jackson wrote of the sinking as being the high point of the Skua's career as a dive bomber. Königsberg was the first major warship ever sunk in the war by air attack and the first major warship ever to be sunk by dive bombing. On the 26th and 27th of April, Skuas destroyed 8 Heinkel HE-111 bombers and damaged several more whilst defending the fleet. During June 1940, Skuas of 801 Squadron flew from shore bases in Kent in support of the Dunkirk evacuation, acting as a unit of RAF Fighter Command. However, these skuas were attacked on several occasions by RAF fighters who were unfamiliar with the aircraft and its paint scheme, with at least one aircraft being shot by a Spitfire and the gunner killed. It was later to crash land at Manston Airfield. On the 13th of June 1940, 2 mostly Skua squadrons suffered heavy losses during an attempt to bomb the Scharnhorst at Trondheim. Of the 15 aircraft in the raid, 8 were shot down and the crews were killed or taken prisoner. Among the latter were both squadron commanders Captain R.T. Partridge and Lieutenant Commander John Casson. One bomb hit Scharnhorst, however this did little damage. Despite its limitations, the Skua attained considerable success as a fighter against Axis bombers and flying boats over Norway, and to a lesser extent in the Mediterranean in the early stages of the conflict. In action off Norway, Skuas destroyed 28 Luftwaffe aircraft in air-to-air combat, including 17 Heinkel HE-111s and 5 Junkers Ju-88s, all kills being confirmed via Luftwaffe records. Lieutenant Commander William Lucy went on to become a fighter ace while flying his Skua. However, as the war intensified, the Skua was found to be too slow and underpowered to be an effective fleet defence fighter. Common Axis foes such as the Junkers Ju-87 and Savoia Marchetti SM-79 were significantly faster than the Skua, making an interception of these aircraft extremely difficult for the type. Another reason for the Skua's ineffectiveness was its armament of 4 forward-firing .303 caliber machine guns, which was becoming increasingly inadequate for this role. Thus, the type was withdrawn from frontline service during 1941. Most Skuas were replaced by another 2-seater, the Fairey Fulmar, which doubled the Skua's forward armament to 8 .303 caliber machine guns and had a speed advantage of 50 miles per hour over the Skua. A number of aircraft were converted to target tugs following withdrawal from frontline service. Others were completed as target tugs from the factory and used by the RAF and Fleet Air Arm in this role. They were also used as advanced trainers for the Fleet Air Arm. The last Skua in service was struck off charge in March 1945, ending the Skua's career. Thank you for making it to the end of the video of my aircraft overview on the Blackburn Skua. This took ages to film, like I've been working on this for over a week, because I lost my ability to speak English and I've never had to record so many lines for each part of the script ever. But I can't say it wasn't fun to film, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.